It's my lucky day. It's my lucky day. It's my lucky day. My lucky day. Don't need a pot of gold.
Good morning, everybody. Welcome to episode 61 of Coffee and Cloud Native. My name is Adrian Goins. Every night, I and my army of bots scour the internet for news and content related to Kubernetes and Cloud Native, and every day you'll find, well, almost every day, you'll find me here to share the bits that I find interesting. Sorry I missed the show yesterday. I had a very busy weekend filming an intro promo video for KubeCon for Rancher, and it got to be late Sunday night, and I was like, I don't have a show for tomorrow. And I don't want to roll in here with, like, nothing. Though I did have the idea of having a competitive 2048 contest. If anybody's up for that, you know, just let us know in the chat. WifeBot's actually really good at 2048. Anyway, we're here today. And so yeah, normally I go through around 200 submissions every night, and I select just a handful of them for the next day's show. These are things that I find interesting, that I would use or might use, and I'm excited to share them with you. If you're watching live on whatever platform, click the button that tells the platform that you like it. And if you're watching in the future, do that as well. Smash the like button, whatever. Do what you have to do. There's a community site too, so you can join that. Links are in the video description, or I'll start that little news crawler thing. There is live chat that happens in the live chat channel on Discord. There's a bot that relays between YouTube, Twitch, and Discord, and it's broken. It's from Restream, and I don't know why it broke last week, but it's broken. So just come to Discord. It's free. There's a thingy going across the down there. Okay, so who do we have in the chat? Hey, good morning, Mac. Hey, good morning, WifeBot. Nice. Wow, we have lots of people here. It's funny. On Discord, I'm just going to start calling out people by their nicknames because I think that's easier. Remember, you can change your nickname now. If you want to be a different name, just right-click on the server in Discord, and you can change your nickname for just the CNCN server. So we got WifeBot, StatClash, Adrian Grimshaw, Smalls, Ian P, Frank. Good morning. Already said hi to Mac, Mo Grady. Lots of people here today. Fantastic. Bala, good morning. WifeBot. WifeBot says that she's not sure if I'll remember how to run a stream. That's possibly true. Code all the things. Nice. Thank you all for joining me. Vito, you're on the show today, dude. We'll get there in a second. So let's get started. I don't remember what button to press. Oh my gosh. Well, that's not going to work. I have a checklist of things I'm supposed to do every morning. Sometimes I follow it. Sometimes I don't. Let's see. What window do we want to share? We want to share the Firefox window. Shh. It's a secret. Frank Yu wrote a blog article called It's a Secret. Does anybody know? I'm going to refresh this. I'm pretty sure this little Giphy thing is from The Office. Is it going to play today? No, it's not going to play today. Okay, well, whatever. So, Max says, I have a browser tab open right now with academy.rancher.com training, so you're seeing a lot of me. Yes, you are. Okay. So Frank wrote an article about the way that we used to store passwords. He's got lots of GIFs in here and stuff like that. But wanting to get a secret management system for his Kubernetes environment. And what got my attention about this was he's talking about the DigitalOcean Kubernetes service. And he talks about a thing that I'd never heard of before, which is often the criteria for how things end up on the show. Because I'm like, well, what the heck is that thing? This is Fortanic's self-defending KMS. Found out later, Mr. Frank Yu works for Fortanix. He doesn't really make that obvious, but I wondered because I'm going through and it's like, yeah, so I just logged into my Fortanix server, and I'm like, who has a Fortanix server just laying around? But it gets more interesting than that. Basically, Fortanix is an appliance Fortanix can be an appliance that uses secure enclaves and some special encryption chip from Intel. Intel is my cellular provider here in Chile. They do not make encryption chips. They are a terrible company. I'm sorry, Intel, if you're watching, but it's true. So then he talks, so this self-defending key management server that holds keys encrypted at rest by using secure enclave. And you can plug it into Kubernetes. And he has another blog here about how to actually plug it into Kubernetes. So we go over to that blog and we're like, oh, okay, interesting. He wrote this a day before the other one. And this talks about using the mutating admission webhook to get stuff in, and it goes by sidecars. So you'll launch something that's annotated, or you can annotate a namespace, or you can annotate individual things, and it attaches a sidecar to them, and the sidecar holds the secrets, and then the secrets are written out to a file, and your application can load that file. You won't be able to use environment variables, so okay. Hey, good morning, Tesh. Good morning, Captain Justin. And so he goes, yeah, blah, 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 setting up... I almost said Intel again. Nuno's not even here. Oh, Mac. 2 Intel mobile users got married. The wedding was fine, but the reception was terrible. Yes. Intel's usually fine. For some reason, my iPhone gets a different signal than the internet service I have from them. So I get 4G on one and 3G on the other, or no service on my phone, which was the case over the weekend. Back to this. Setting up Fortanix. It's like a murder mystery. So he's like, oh, if you haven't signed up for Fortanix, well, go over here. So I went to there, and it's a login page. Oh, except now I'm logged in. So whatever. It's a login page. And then I did some snuffling around, and I found that Equinix has this as a service. Equinix SDKMS. And yeah, so Equinix has one of these devices, and you can use it in a SaaS mode, but I could not find pricing for any of this. Start your free trial. We're not going to tell you how much it costs. And that window doesn't work anyway because I'm super fascist about the ad blocking and whatnot. So back over here. Fortanix's website. Interesting. No pricing. But it's easy to get started. How do you get started? 1, try SaaS. 2, buy the product. Okay, whatever. 3, learn more. I think those should probably be in a different order. However, it is actually free. I don't know how free it is. I don't know if you get like one account, if you get one app, if you get one whatever. But if you go to the link in here, sdkms.fortanix.com, and you click sign up, that's it. You get it. So inside of here, you can create apps, you can create security objects, you can create stuff. And then if you jump back over to Mr. Frank Yu's blog, he'll tell you how to actually attach those things to sidecars and get them loaded into your stuff. I was chatting with Pop last night, and I was like, have you ever heard of these people? He hasn't heard of them either. So I'm curious to know if any of you have experience with Fortanix. I mean, if Equinix is willing to run it as a SaaS, it probably doesn't suck. Or Fortanix, if you're watching, because I'm gonna mention you on Twitter when this goes out tomorrow. I am curious what... Yeah, I know. Kent says if you have to ask, then you can't afford it. That's usually the case. And I know for companies, security stuff, like it's probably going to be expensive, but it would be really cool if they had like you can attach 1 cluster, or you can use 100 secrets or something. So there you go. Let me know if you find out anything. And certainly if my account suddenly stops working, I'll let you know as well. All right, Waypoint. People are still going all bazonkers about Waypoint, and I still totally don't get it. I don't get it. So Ranak has a blog where he's like, okay, here's how you get started with Waypoint. And so you run Waypoint up, and we get all of that. He's got, okay, so install it on Mac. And then, do all this stuff with Docker Desktop. Hooray. Okay, let's scroll past that. Oh, he actually... Does he even have a Waypoint? He doesn't have his whole config. But okay, so you install Waypoint. Great. Waypoint token new. You get a token. You log into Docker Hub. You create something. And basically, you run Waypoint init. And then to deploy the application, you run Waypoint up to build and deploy your application. the way the waypoint works is you have this config file that says, okay, how do you build it? Where do you put it? And then where's your Kubernetes cluster for you to actually go and run it? And honestly, like, why is this better than just Docker build? And why is this better than a GitOps solution? And if all of the... My tweet for this tomorrow is actually going to compare this to Rancher's Rio, which, granted, Rio is still alpha. It's not released like Waypoint is, but I think Rancher needs to just get it out the door. You can use it. It's pretty stable. Waypoint will just like create a manifest and spit it into a Kubernetes cluster. Probably you can configure that manifest, but if you have to configure the manifest before you use Waypoint to deploy it, why not just deploy the manifest? With a solution like Rio, you can use Rio Run to run your application, and it doesn't just, first of all, when you install Rio into a Kubernetes cluster, you get service mesh, you get Knative, so you get build kit, you get all of this stuff where it doesn't build things locally and like push it out to a registry and then run kubectl apply. It actually does everything from inside of the Kubernetes cluster. And so it does all the build. It actually has a local internal registry. You can have all your versioning done internally. You can do canary deployments, so you can do staged rollouts, you can do versioning, you can do rollback, and it all runs from a simple config file that I think is simpler than what Waypoint has, and is way more powerful. So if you're interested, I don't even know where Rio is. Rio.io? I haven't looked at Rio in forever. I made a 7 days of Rio video and I only got to day 6 because at the time, this was almost a year ago now, at the time it just wasn't quite there. They've done a lot of work on it since. Let's blow this up a little bit. So go to Rio.io. If you're interested in Waypoint, go look at Rio and you may find that it's just a better solution. It certainly makes more sense. I can't figure out what value Waypoint has except taking things that you would do manually and writing an abstraction layer on top of it that gives you less functionality. That's my assessment. Hey! We know this guy. I'm going to turn off that little news crawler down there. A fun experiment with Kubernetes brought to you by our very own Vito Botta. Oh, he just discovered it in the chat. Yeah, so Vito was sitting at home and was like, how do I do a Kubernetes migration without actually doing a backup and a restore? What can I do? And he created a blog that shows building a multi-cloud Kubernetes cluster using Rancher that has control plane and worker nodes spread between Hetzner Cloud and DigitalOcean, and then essentially just shutting one of them down and doing a phased migration. It's a step-by-step walkthrough of how to do this, and it uses Longhorn for the replication of the storage layer, so you can get your storage replicas in both locations. And while it's just a proof of concept, it demonstrates that using Kubernetes, which it's nice to see that he's using Rancher with it, but you could do this with other Kubernetes clusters, just a little bit harder. So using Kubernetes and then using a replicated block storage solution like Longhorn, you can build a multi-cloud cluster and then just rip half of it out and have it all just continue to work. Now, my assessment of this is there are a couple extra things if you want to make this work in a production environment that you should just be aware of and be careful about. In his example, he sets up 6 nodes, 3 in Hetzner Cloud and 3 in DigitalOcean, at which point you have an etcd control plane or a data plane of 6 nodes with which you can't actually achieve quorum. So that's a risk. Now, granted, when you shut 3 of those down, the problem is if you have a 6-node cluster, quorum needs to be an odd number greater than 50%. So it actually needs 5. So shutting 3 of them down, you're going to end up with 3. That's not enough to maintain quorum. So what you actually need to do is decommission etcd nodes as you're doing the migration. So you can bring up nodes, and for this you need to do it without, well, I guess you can do it inside of Rancher if you just delete the nodes, because Rancher will decommission the nodes as part of that process. So you bring up, for example, 3 etcd nodes in Hetzner, and then you bring up 3 nodes in DigitalOcean, but not with etcd. Let's see if we can figure this out. So bring up 3 over here, bring up 3 over here, delete 1 in Hetzner, add, let's see, delete 1. If you add 1 over here, at that point you're back into 3. Probably you're going to have to actually add 2. So for a moment, that's ugly. You want to make sure that you have an odd number of etcd nodes as you're doing the migration. And outside of that, everything else is fine. I'm not going to try and do the math on that on the fly, but now I'm stuck in it. I had a video on YouTube, it's probably still out there, where I showed the flexibility of RKE and how you can go from a single node up to 3 nodes on the fly. So you got 3 nodes over here. Add 1 over there. Add 2 over there. It's like a shell game. You're going to have to add, delete, add, delete, add, delete, and move the data plane over if you're actually wanting to do a migration. Anyway, from a proof of concept, it's, yeah, Adrian.exe not responding. Very cute, Kinth. I'm going to have to think about it, and I'll come back to you guys later. Vito says, I hadn't thought about the quorum. Is it okay, though, if it's just a short time for the migration? As long as... So the thing is, if you have an even number of nodes, you'll never have quorum. Your quorum, well, you'll if you have an even number of nodes and you cut it in half, you won't get a majority on either side, so you won't get a leader elected, and your cluster effectively goes down. So you almost need to add more nodes on the other side so that you end up with a majority. So let's say 3 nodes over here, add 4 nodes over here so that you have 7. Then if you shut down these 3 nodes in the one cloud, you still have a majority on the other cloud. Everything moves over. You have to actually delete these 3 nodes and 1 node over here, at which point etcd will reconfigure itself to go from 7 nodes down to 3 nodes, and you'll have your quorum over on the other side. That should work. But certainly test it. So thank you, Vito. And what's great is, yeah, Ken says split brain is bad. Split brain is bad. Anybody who's ever done replicated storage with DRBD on like terabytes of storage and had a split brain where you've got to replicate stuff, split brain is bad. Avoid it at all costs. Adrian has split brain. All right, we're moving on. Thank you, Vito. Oh, so I was going to say before I closed on this, the bots actually found this. Vito didn't tell me about it. But if any of you write content, just ping me about it. I'd love to see what you guys are putting together and put it on the show. Next up, Ubuntu now has a desktop image for the Raspberry Pi. They've had a server image for a while, but with 20.10, they now have a desktop image. I don't know if that's cool or not. I don't know. I'm skeptical about the Raspberry Pi actually as a desktop because I've burned through so many Raspberry Pis with SD card exhaustion. But if you're going to play with them, then that's cool. Just make sure that you aren't just slamming log data or anything like that to your SD card. Get that off onto something else. Otherwise, one day your Raspberry Pi will just boop, stop being there. I have 2 of them in the other room that I'm like, oh, really? Again? Anyway, Ubuntu Desktop, now available for the Raspberry Pi and supports as well the new Compute 4 module. The Compute Module 4. Compute Module 4? Do you remember when I had Turing Pi 2 on the show last week? And I talked about their upcoming, well, I had Turing Pi on the show, and I talked about their upcoming Turing Pi 2. And well, that apparently GIF didn't load. Let's refresh that. Okay. The compute module. This is pretty cool. The compute module for the compute module 3 looked like an SO-DIMM. So it was just a like laptop RAM, right? So that made a connector really easy, and that's why the Turing Pi uses the compute module 3. You just snap that in. Well, the compute module 4, I didn't realize this when I had Turing Pi on the show last week. The compute module 4 is a completely different architecture. It has this little connector on the back like this, so high density connector. But it means that it's not the SO-DIMM anymore. It needs something else. Well, this explains why Turing Pi has this graphic. I thought Turing Pi was creating the compute module. No, Turing Pi is creating a connector that's an SO-DIMM that you can snap your, oh, you can't see my mouse, in the middle, that you can, I need to be able to like reach across the screen. So that you can snap your compute module 4 into, and then has a heatsink that sits on top of that. Now the heatsink is the primary reason that they're only able to get 4 of these on a Turing Pi instead of 7 like the current version. But even if you don't use the Turing Pi, this is really smart. It's very simple, and it opens the door for other platforms to use the SO-DIMM form factor. Super cool. Oh man, Mac, you're on fire today. Give it a chance to load. Okay. We have a new entrant into the developer tools for Kubernetes race. Not new in the sense that they just appeared, but new in the sense that I haven't come across them before. They had a new release, which is one of the things that the bots look for, that pops things up and throws them over for me to look at. And it's another thing where you can have local microservices running, and it does the bridging to a remote Kubernetes cluster. Not a developer. I don't use any of these, but I find them very interesting. I find the whole conversation around developers and them being special and needing specialness, which I don't think is actually true. I think developers are just normal people like you and I, and they just want to write code the same way that I want to build systems. I've never actually run into a developer who's like, Kubernetes sucks, I'm not going to use it. Maybe they exist, but I kind of think that companies are building this value proposition around frees developers up to do development, when maybe that's not even valuable. But tools that enable, like Vagrant, when Vagrant came out, Vagrant was amazing. Tools that enable developers to connect to remote Kubernetes clusters and do local development, I think are also really cool. This, in my quick assessment of it, didn't tell me how the proxying actually works, or if you want to plug this into a production cluster, or if you just want to have a development cluster that's out there that multiple people are doing development against. But it looks very robust and well built. I love the name. It's called Monday. Who doesn't love Mondays, right? So here you go. Oh, is it raining? It's all gloomy outside. Can you even see? Normally it's bright out there. Today it is not. It's going to rain. Terse news from AWS. The ALB ingress controller, which they announced a couple of weeks or months or something ago, is now the AWS load balancer controller, because why the heck not? But it now includes support for both ALBs and NLBs. What's cool is, so now, I guess in the previous incarnation, the ingress controller didn't support stuff running on Fargate. Apparently that's a thing. This now enables you to use NLBs to target pods running on Fargate, as well as ALBs that respond to ingress requests. So one of the big complaints about using load balancer services is it's a one-to-one relationship between the service and the load balancer, and at $20 a month, ELBs are expensive. So the standard configuration is you deploy a layer 4 load balancer that maps through to your ingress controller on your actual Kubernetes cluster itself, and then that handles the routing. The problem with that is, how does that scale? if you've just got a 3-node Kubernetes cluster or a 50-node Kubernetes cluster or whatever, but you get enough traffic, you don't want to be scaling up nodes just so you can handle load balancer traffic. That doesn't make any sense at all. Well, now the ALB with this controller will respond to ingress configuration and configure the ALB, and the ALB scales to ridiculous infinite list. Infiniteless? That's a good word, right? Ridiculous infinitelessness. Infinitelessness. Booyah! Word of the day. I'm going to type that in the chat. Infinitelessness. There we go. So this is cool. This gets you to a single ALB for all of your AWS ingress requests. You get all of the scaling that the load balancer tier from Amazon is known for and is great for. I think it solves a real problem, and it's nice to see Amazon making that available to us, even though they changed the name. But hey, you know, whatever. Helm 3.4 dropped yesterday. Yesterday? Yes, yesterday, day before, something, recently. Helm does releases and whatever, patches. What do they call them? Bug fixes. So feature releases and bug fix releases. So this is a minor release, 3.4.0, so it actually has features in it. The next bug fix release will be 3.4.1 because, well, that's math. The interesting thing about this is, of course, coming up on November 13th, all of the Helm stable and incubator chart repositories will be decommissioned, and you will be out of luck, soldier. But they were thoughtful enough that they're going to actually archive them, because probably people were like, what? And of course, somebody's not going to get it rolled out or done in time, and stuff's going to collapse, and you know they don't want to be the bad guys, so they're going to archive them. Cool, read only, nice. Helm will now detect the previous location, and it will direct you to update to the new location if you're using stable or incubator repository. Thank you, Helm. Very nice. Of course, if you don't update Helm, you won't get that feature, but it's still pretty cool. Probably if you're the kind of person who updates your Helm client binary, you probably know that the repo's changed. Unless you're in like an organization that doesn't care or where you don't control it. I don't know. That's still, it's cool. Now we're on to the tool of the day. I swear, I 100% swear I had this on the show already. I looked through all of the show notes. I looked for everything related to cron job, to time zone, and I can't find it. So either I dreamt it or I decided not to put it on the show for some reason. I don't know. Or it was something else entirely. Cron jobber. It's cron job controller for Kubernetes, and it supports time zones. Because maybe you want your cron job to run at a particular time where something else happens somewhere that's not the Kubernetes cluster. And as we all know, especially now, time changes. For example, I guess Europe came off a daylight saving time last weekend. The United States comes off daylight saving time next weekend. So this week sucks because times are all messed up. Chile, of course, is in the southern hemisphere, so we do things opposite. And we also have our own random time that we come on and off daylight saving time. So at the moment, that's why I do the show at 7:30 Eastern, and I leave you all to figure it out. In fact, if you join the community site, it will tell you what the show time is in your time zone, which is nice. Twitch does the same thing. YouTube is weird. Anyway, no, okay, so Kent says we should all run off of UTC. No, dude, Swatch beats time. I'm telling you, Beats was the best thing ever. I used to have a little widget that would sit in my Mac system bar that would tell me what the Beats time was, and it was great. I was here in Chile, and I had an employee who was back in Krakow, and we were doing work together, and we didn't have to figure out the time. I'd be like, let's meet at, whatever, 963. I don't remember what it was. Beats time. Anyway. Child of the 80s. Remember swatches? You used to have like 15 of them on your arm. I had 0 because my mom was like, that's stupid. I'm not going to buy you 15 watches, especially not for what they cost. Okay, so cron jobber. I was talking about the show. It's at 7:30 Eastern time, and when the U.S. comes off daylight saving time, it'll actually be at 9:30 in the morning my time. Now it's at 8:30. A month ago it was at 7:30. My workday will go from I either start work at 9 a.m., 10 a.m., or 11 a.m., depending on the time of year. It's ridiculous. This is a cool tool. So if you want a cron job to run at a particular time in Amsterdam, for example, well, you can specify that. The caveat of this is, so it's a CRD, well, it's a custom resource. So you create a TZ cron job instead of a cron job. And you are responsible for maintaining the time zone database, because every time Chile changes its time, it takes the internet a year to figure it out. And this is, in fact, why time zone support is not in Kubernetes. Apparently because maintaining the time zone database when random countries change it is difficult. There were 2 years. For 2 years, I had to tell my phone that I was in Brazil just so that OTP passwords would work correctly, because Chile was on one time and the rest of the internet thought Chile was on another time. But he gives a way, whoever the creator is of this, gives a way to load the time zone database into this, and yeah, so this whole thing. Whoops. So load the time zone database, keep it up to date. Apparently there's another problem with Go, where time zone data after 2020B also has a problem. Regardless, it's a really cool tool, and if you run a Kubernetes cluster in one place and you need stuff to happen from time in another place, well, this prevents you from having to care about time. I was going to say having to give a, you know, it's a family-friendly show. That's right. Wifebot's talking about Chilean time. Ladies and gentlemen, that's all we have for the show today. Boom. 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 If you like what you saw today, please press the magic buttons that tell the internet you liked what you saw today. Give stuff a thumbs up, subscribe to the channel, follow me on Twitch, Twitter, join the Discord server. Links to everything I talk about go up in the free community site at community.cncn.org.